Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bonnie Schroeder, and I'm the Director of Age Friendly Ottawa with the Council on Aging of Ottawa. I'm delighted to be co-hosting this webinar, Redesigning Long-Term Care for a Day Well Lived, in partnership with CARP. Delighted to have you here today, asking for everyone coming in to turn their cameras and microphones off as we begin to record. I'll hand it over to my CARP colleagues to introduce themselves and the guest speakers. Do enjoy this webinar.
Thank you very much, Bonnie, and good afternoon, everybody. And very many thanks also to the Council on Aging for co-hosting this webinar with us today. So my name is Kathy Wright, and I chair CARP's Ottawa Advocacy Working Group on Long-Term Care, which includes members from Ottawa, Mississauga, Hamilton, and Niagara. And for the last 5 years, we've been collaborating with other CARP chapters and like-minded organizations in Ontario to influence the change in long-term care from institutions to homes. What this means is transitioning from the traditional institutional, medical, and task-oriented model of care to a person-centered or emotion-based approach where 12 to 16 residents live in a smaller home-like environment and where resident staff and families all live with the dignity and respect they deserve. This change is happening, as you will hear from our presenters today, but only at a snail's pace in Ontario so far. However, exciting news is on the horizon, we hope. In December 2024, the Ontario Ministry of Long-Term Care announced an investment of $9 million to train staff in emotion-based care, or person-centered care, as some call it. The plan is to set up 15 pilot homes where this training will be done. Progress has been slow so far, but if in fact this actually happens and the right leaders are chosen, it has the potential to be a game changer for our long-term care homes in Ontario. If you're interested in more information or supporting our work in any way, please contact us at our website, www.changeltcnow.ca. And I now have the pleasure of introducing our speakers for today, Mark Blandford and Sharon Parks. Mark is an occupational therapist who has worked in a variety of healthcare leadership roles with nonprofit and regional health authorities in British Columbia. He joined Providence Healthcare Vancouver in 2020 as Vice President, Seniors Clinical and Operations, and since 2023, Mark has served as President and CEO of Providence Healthcare's sister organization, Providence Living. Sharon is the Director of Operations Seniors Care. She has executive oversight for Providence Healthcare long-term care homes and of all Providence Living Care Village operations, including clinical support services, HR, staffing services, and activities relating to community and assisted living provincial licenses. Phew, Sharon, really? That's a lot. Sharon holds a master's degree in education from the University of Surrey and a Bachelor of Science in Nursing with honors from Sheffield Hallam University. Mark and Sharon will now outline how the transition from a traditional institutional long-term care approach to a social-relational model of care is being achieved at Providence Living's new long-term care home. Thank you so much, Mark and Sharon, for sharing this exciting news with us today. The transition you are working on is exactly what is needed for all our long-term care homes across Canada. I hand the mic over to you, Mark.
Thanks very much indeed for that kind introduction, Kathy. And yeah, we hope this is something that others in Canada can learn from. So thanks for saying that. That's certainly what we believe. I'd say that we're on a journey. And we're 5 years into this particular journey, and hopefully you'll judge by the end to see how well we're doing. So Sharon's going to control the slides here for us. So go to the next slide, Sharon. And it's fitting that we remind everybody that we in British Columbia live on unceded ancestral territories of the Coast Salish peoples. We actually work on several nations, the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. We also have operations on the Comox Nation, which is primarily the building we're going to talk about today, and we're moving to build future homes in the north of British Columbia, initially on the territories of the Tla'aque'e, and then the Wet'suwet'en people, and further down the line the Lactacto Dene nations. So we have very strong, we'll maybe touch on this in our presentation, we have strong relationships with our First Nations. For us, reconciliation is more than just an acknowledgement. It is a deep desire of ours as a Catholic healthcare organization to reach out and reconcile with the people who've looked after this land in millennia, and for whom we as a Catholic healthcare organization indeed have some reconciliation work to do. So we'll maybe touch on that as we go through, but for us it's quite a serious, tangible effort, not just a land acknowledgement. As far as our objectives today, we really just want to kind of describe a little bit about the environment that we've created here, why we think it's innovative, what we based it on. You've already been talking about how the social-relational model differs from the traditional institutional model. We'll touch on that, but it feels to me like you already are thinking in that direction. So we won't spend too much time on that. The change management, taking a traditional institutional model of care and the staff, taking them from where they were to where we are now, that is the work. And we're still heavily engaged in that. It's not something that's just done in a couple of years. Talking to a group of nurses here this morning, we still have a long way to go, although, you know, we've achieved a fair bit. And then we do have a very interesting evaluation through the University of British Columbia. It's a 5-year evaluation. So we hope to be publishing some of that initial data toward the end of this year, so that we can prove to governments in particular that this is not just a good thing to do for people, this is a good thing to do for budgets and for overall healthcare sustainability. So a little bit to touch on. That's a whole separate presentation, by the way, but we'll touch on it toward the end. I'm not going to dwell too much on this, but we are a Catholic healthcare organization. Providence Living was set up by Providence Healthcare. As you can see on this slide, Providence Healthcare has been delivering care in Vancouver since the early 20s, actually. But Providence Healthcare was set up primarily as a development arm of Providence Healthcare. We are a separate organization. As you can see, in 2017, we became a separate organization. Providence Healthcare operates a number of care homes in Vancouver. Until recently, I was responsible for all of those. Now Sharon is. Also operates 2 acute care hospitals in Vancouver. The St. Paul's Hospital, which is being rebuilt, will open as a new hospital in late 2027. And so Providence Healthcare realized that they needed to focus on seniors care because the new hospital was going to distract them in a good way. And so Providence Living was created partly to maintain focus on seniors care and seniors development. But the other reason we were developed was that we have been created as a non-government entity, meaning we can actually acquire and hold debt, which is really important when you're talking about developing large capital infrastructure. So as Providence Living, we can go to the bank the same way anybody can to get a mortgage, as long as we've got obviously a good business plan. And we've proven that we can build quicker, faster, and frankly, way cheaper than the health authorities in British Columbia are currently building. I know this is being recorded, and we've told the Minister of Health this very fact, but we're building for about 30% less in terms of capital dollars than any of the health authorities in British Columbia right now. And we're able to do that because of our nimbleness and the fact that we don't need to go through onerous, lengthy government procurement processes. Again, another whole presentation for that. So we've completed this village that we're going to talk about today here in Comox. We have contracts to build another care home in Vancouver. We're just breaking ground on a 240-bed care village in Vancouver, St. Vincent Heather. And we have 3 projects in process in the northern part of British Columbia. The first 200-bed care home, care village is being constructed in Prince George. That's actually in construction as I speak. And we have a second and a third in Quesnel and help me out, Sharon, just lost it.
Smithers.
Smithers, thank you. That was a senior's moment there for me. So this village we're talking about today is the first of 5. So we're very committed to this model of care being developed extensively in the areas that we control in British Columbia. Carry on, Sharon. I am a senior, by the way, so if I can say that I had a senior's moment there. Just a little bit about the care homes we operate. We have a 156-bed home here in Comox. We do operate 2 other homes in Vancouver. They're on the downtown east side. We work very closely with the marginalized population on the downtown east side of Vancouver. And then I've already spoken to our future sites in that column, so I'll skip through that one. Why do we need to even bother with this? Well, I think Kathy started with this at the very beginning. I'm an occupational therapist and I started working in long-term care many moons ago now. And it always struck me as not a place I'd want to live. And I've not spoken to too many people who would want to live in our traditional 4-bed institutional type homes. Having said that, the care in the homes I've worked in and the homes I've seen is excellent. We deliver good care. We deliver compassionate and loving care for the most part. We have issues, but when you compare Canada to other jurisdictions across the country, we have good quality care for the most part in our long-term care homes. But the fact is that quality of care is very institutional. Maybe go to the next slide, Sharon. It's very much based on a hospital model. And so if you compare it to a village approach that you could see in Europe, the style of long-term care that we have predominantly is not about the person. It's about creating a system that's efficient, that ensures people get 3 square meals a day, they're clean, they're medically cared for, and that doesn't lead to very much of a life. You sustain life, but you don't really create a living environment that people want to be in. So that comes from the building design. Traditionally, across Canada, our long-term care is based on a hospital approach. In BC, we still have something like 40% of our stock, people living in 4 bedrooms, sharing 1 bathroom, minimal access to the outdoors, and a very industrial approach to food and housekeeping and laundry, to the point where the food is very unpalatable. The medical care, as this slide points out, again, I think this is stuff that you as an organization are already focused on. But it bears pointing out that we have created care homes to run for the convenience and the efficiency of the staff and often the budget. And what we're trying to prove in our developments is that you can do both. You can have a very financially efficient model. You can have a model that staff really enjoy working in, but you can deliver for residents a far better day well lived. You can change the way routines are set up. And when we compare ourselves to other approaches, for instance, the Eden alternative, which we really applaud, one of the things that when we look at the difference between how we've done things, we've looked at the underpinnings of institutional care. What makes care institutional? The workflows, the union contracts, the regulations that we have to follow, all of those things need to change. The leadership model, the fact that our care aides are often not given any discretion or any decision-making ability at all in their day. And the care aide is often the person closest to the resident who perhaps knows the resident best. But our traditional institutional approach is that the care aide has to take direction, not allowed to make decisions. So when we look at what we've done here for the last 3 years, we've spent all of our time figuring out what are the drivers that management can change. So we have introduced new job descriptions. We've assessed more than 200 plus workflows and looked at those workflows in terms of how do they impact that resident's enjoyment for the day. And we've changed painfully all of those elements. I think that one of the things that we we pride ourselves on is that we are looking to create a community that is about the resident's home rather than the staff's workplace. Let me go to the next slide, Sharon. Now, just a quick view of the building that we're talking about here today. All the other buildings that we're building have all based on this design, which is another reason we can build very quickly, because we're tweaking a design rather than creating a new design for every build. It's 156 beds. It is based on that European dementia village model. We're closely aligned to the Dehugwe group. We're very impressed with what we've seen and how Dehugwe approach things. We haven't done everything. We haven't copied everything that they prescribe, but we've certainly used them as consultants, and we're closely aligned to them. This is phase 1. We have a 13-acre site, and phase 2 and phase 3 involves us building the rest of this 13-acre site to create a true village. So although this is a licensed, regulated home, this will eventually open up to just to sort of the left-hand side of the picture will be the rest of the village. So supportive housing, there will be some market condos to assist with our financial modeling, but supportive housing, assisted living, and then some services like primary care will be on the village site. So the goal eventually is that our residents will have more than just this central courtyard that you can see to wander in. They'll be able to wander safely through the whole village. Next slide, Karen. The building, I won't go too much into the floor plan, but it's a 3-level building. We had to build on a slope. So the very bottom of the building, what you're seeing here is kind of the back of house, a car park in the middle. A key thing to point out is our child daycare, number 8. So we've created a model in which children are integrated with our residents. The daycare is primarily accessible to our staffs, and those staff that wanted daycare spaces were able to achieve them. I think it's about 29 spaces, Sharon, approximately.
Yeah, 32, and we have a 60%
32.
of them are available for staff.
Yeah. So 60% for staff. We have an adult day program, so that's a community kind of in Ontario. You know that as a day hospital approach. Next slide, Sharon. This is the sort of meat, if you like, of the care home. The central courtyard you saw in the previous picture is where residents get to freely wander outdoors, and this truly is the sort of centerpiece of the whole approach. Everybody in their household has access to this garden very quickly. Either if they're on ground floor, they literally walk into the courtyard. If they're on the upper levels, they come down in an elevator. And we very purposely have created the outdoor courtyard as an uncovered space, so people have to experience the elements, and that's part and parcel of us creating a orientation to time, date, season. Every resident has their own room with their own bathroom, so and they live in a 12-bed household. So the 12-bed households mean that you're with a much smaller group of people. The Dehugwe approach is 6, but really in the Canadian system, the economics of doing a 6-person household really don't work for us. So we've gone with 12. The ideal number for a financial model is 14. So we've not gone that high. We think that's too many people living together. But each 12-bed household has its own kitchen, dining room, sitting room, laundry room, so that many of the daily activities, and Sharon will talk about this when we get to the actual model, can be done within your own household. In the central courtyard, that's that sort of rectangular building on the left, the longer one, that's our multi-denominational chapel. We're a Catholic healthcare organization, so faith is a big part of what we do. So we have a chapel, but it is multi-denominational. And then to the right, back to that tangible, the little triangular building. In terms of our reconciliation approach, that is a Indigenous spiritual space that we built in collaboration with the Comox First Nation here in Comox. It was built to their specification. It is their space to use. It's our attempt to show them that they have control of their own space within this building. Now, there are issues with it. I think the nation is still suspicious of us as an organization, perhaps, but they are working with us and they are starting to use the space. In Prince George, we've started much earlier working with the Tla'aque'tonay First Nation on the space that they will have. So we've learned from this experience, but it's certainly, and Sharon can answer questions around that because she was the lead on that. In terms of the overall building, some of the features of the building that are kind of unique would be the bistro. So we have a casual dining bistro, which is run by an outside third party for profit, her profit, not ours. So if you don't care for what's being served for meals in your household, you can wander across to the bistro, get a cappuccino, have a delicious pastry. The lady that runs it used to be a pastry chef at the Empress in Victoria. She makes delightful pastries. So the bistro sits adjacent to a wonderful patio that has a view of the ocean and the mountains to our south. We're situated high up, and we look over the Straits of I guess it's the Salish Sea anyway, and toward the mountains in the south. We have a wellness center, which is what we've done with our physio and OT, because that's a requirement and it's a great need. They have an actual clinic, if you like, and residents come to them with appointments rather than them wandering around the buildings, interrupting the residents as they're doing things, engaged in activities. So much more of a clinic model as you'd have in the community rather than them just wandering around the building. We do have a commercial laundry and kitchen. The lunch and breakfast meals are prepared in the 12-bed household with the staff and the residents. So residents can, cook their own breakfast and lunch if they want to. We provide the third meal, the evening meal, from our commercial kitchen. Again, that's just a logistics thing. We're looking at whether we can change that, but for the time being, we're going to keep it as it is. And the famous story that we often tell people around the kitchen, it just gives residents choice. I asked a resident a while ago what she liked about living here, and she told me fried eggs. And when I asked her, why fried eggs, she said that when she lived in the old care home, all she got every day was our rubber ball boiled eggs. That's about the best we can do in an institutional setting, is a boiled egg that was cooked 4 hours ago. She gets up every morning, cooks herself a fresh fried egg sandwich, and for her, that gives her that sense of control and regular living. And the residents, if they choose to, they can walk across to our grocery store. For those of you familiar with the dementia villages in Europe, you'll know that grocery store is a big part of the activity of the day. So we have a grocery store. You'll see pictures of it in a minute. And residents can wander across the grocery store if they want to and get something a bit different if they don't fancy what's in the kitchen for that day. I'm just going to move on just in view of time. I think I'm almost done here. I won't go too much into design. Just one thing out there. We don't have nursing stations in our 12-bed households. Again, we have a private office the nurses can retreat to if they want to. For meetings and so on. But generally, we encourage the nurses to function like community nurses. They come in, they have a laptop, they set up a table that it's kind of a desk type table, but it's not a nursing station. So no covered in nursing stations. There's a medication cupboard that for every household. So the nurses are much more part of the community rather than kind of locked away in obscure nursing stations. That was a tough one to get across the line, but I think it's fair to say the nurses do love that approach now. We do have, we've designed the building so that all the back of house functions, things like materials moving around, that all happens out of sight of the residents. So underneath the building, we have these kind of concrete tunnels. And you'll see at the bottom of this slide, we use robots to move materials around. The robots free up staff. We're able to deploy staff to care rather than ancillary work. But the robots have been a big success in many respects. We didn't design the building for them, so that's where there've been some issues. In Prince George and our other buildings, we've designed the buildings for these robots. So again, they're out of sight of the resident. They move material around 24 hours, and that again improves our efficiencies. I think we're almost there, Sharon. So I'm going to hand over to Sharon, who actually has her office here at the Views, and she can talk a little bit more about kind of what the building looks like and how that lived environment really does support that day well lived that we're driving for.
Yeah, so hi everybody. I've got the pleasure of actually showing you some of the photos of what it actually really looks like now, and sort of talking a little bit about the bit that I think is really important, and that's the model of care, because the building provides the background. It allows the staff to have an environment that they can provide care in, but really it's around the type of care that they're providing in the environment that they're in. And so this front picture, this actually, Mark mentioned this, this is the balcony that comes out from the bistro, where you actually, if you could turn it around, you'd actually be able to see the ocean. So it's pretty beautiful. But here are some of the photos. So I'm going to caveat that some of these photos were taken before we moved in, and so they actually look a lot different now, because one of the really important things about our model of care is that the residents and the families and the staff can choose what the houses look like. And so what you find now when you go into some of these households is they actually look very different. Furniture has been moved, there's different artwork on the walls. And so, you know, trying to make them more home-like, so people get that feeling that they actually belong there and this is the community that they belong in. The other thing you'll notice as we go through some of these photos is the colors. So each of the neighborhoods have different colors to allow for residents to work out where they are. So one of the ones here you see is like this sort of amber color, but we have a blue and a green and a yellow, so people know that they're in the right area. So what you see here is a picture of our open plan kitchen, dining, and living room area. And so this is where 12 people live. The corridor to the right is where the bedrooms are that go to the back. But here what we've tried to do is create a kitchen that is recognizable, because when you go into a lot of institutions, the other homes that I look after, there isn't really a kitchen. So it's really hard for people with dementia to understand what they're doing at certain times of the day. But here, it's, if you're sitting, you know, around the kitchen, you smell the food, you get a good idea that, okay, I'm here and I'm meant to be eating now. So it's food time, or I'm here to prepare food. The other thing it does in this open plan concept with the kitchen and the breakfast being here and lunch being here, is that residents actually get to either participate in those activities if they are able, whether that's a small piece, maybe they're making helping make some sandwiches, butter some bread, or cut some vegetables, or they actually just get to watch, which I think is one of the things that most residents really enjoy to do. They actually get to see their food being prepared. On the right, you'll see is one of our living rooms. So the living rooms have a mixture of chairs that our residents can sit in. We've tried to resemble furniture that you might find at home. And obviously, quite a few of our residents are in wheelchairs, so you have to enable space for people to be able to move around with their wheelchairs. And again, we've tried to ground the living room with a fireplace and a television, things that you would find in your normal home. Oops, I just pressed it too far. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm having trouble with pressing too many buttons. Our rooms, the rooms are very, very basic, and residents are able to adapt those rooms to how they would like. So we, by legislation, have to provide certain equipment, and so that's what we do. So it's very basic, as in the bed, the wardrobe, and a bedside table, and then everything else the residents can bring in. So we allow them to bring in, if they want to, a chair that they'd like, or some other furniture, and obviously they can put things up on the walls to make it feel like homes. The second picture to the right, you'll see just through to the washroom. So every room has its own ensuite washroom, where there is a walk-in shower, a toilet, and then a sink for residents. Each room also has an overhead lift, so enabling us to care for a variety of different complex needs of our residents. Some more pictures of the bathroom. The one to the right, Mark mentioned, which I think is really important, is I've worked in areas where, to help people with their dementia, you give them these tasks to do, like folding sheets, or not sheets, but I guess it's more like little blankets or flannels. What we wanted to do is actually bring the normalcy of home back into this house, where if residents want to participate in their laundry, they can. So all the personal laundry is done in the household. Sometimes this is an activity with residents, and sometimes it's some of our staff do this activity. But what we have found is there's a huge reduction in things getting lost. So things not having to go down to a big laundry or down to a commercial laundry. These are some of the pictures of a close-up of the kitchen. Again, you can see the colors are different. We've got one kitchen here on the green. Mark mentioned that we had looked at our job descriptions. So one of the job descriptions that is very new to us is something called a multi-service worker. And this was a combination of the person that you would find in the building that participated in food service or in laundry or in housekeeping. And so we combined this role, and it's a bit like your mum. That's how I sort of think about it. It's somebody at home. They're helping cook the meals, prepare the meals. They're helping doing some basic cleaning. The thing that this job has done for these staff is enabled them to integrate with our residents, which they didn't have that before. And so we don't have any vacancies for this position. People really love this work. They love being able to work with the residents. They love being able to be in the household and feel like they have more of a purpose. Some more pictures just of the kitchens. Again, we tried to design the kitchens so they would be things that you would find in your normal house. So most of the equipment that we went for is just domestic grade things that you would see. So for example, you can see the cooker, the oven on the right. The only things that we do have that are slightly different is we still have to have steam wells, because of that one meal a day that Mark mentioned that's still coming up from downstairs. And so things need to be kept warm. But you can see that we have a regular microwave, and we have a regular cooker. We have, and then we went for commercial dishwashers, mainly because of the efficiency of being able to clean stuff quickly and quietly. They are very quiet and they're very quick. And so that's the only difference from maybe your kitchen at home. This is some pictures of the outside of the building. Mark mentioned the daycare. So on the left, you can see the daycare, 32 spots. 60% of those spots are available to our staff. Has its own entrance, but we do have an intergenerational program where the children from the daycare actually come up and meet the residents and come up into our main outdoor space as well, into our courtyard. This is a real life view of our courtyards. And so designed with intention, so they do have the typical sort of walking circles that you would get in any space for seniors. And so there is a place for them to walk. But what we found with this courtyard is it helps really de-escalate a lot of the behaviors that you might see, because we have freedom of access, freedom of movement. And so with some of the technology we have something called real-time locating system, which is a pendant or a band that the resident can wear that enables them to walk freely outside, out of their home, into the building and into all of our community spaces. It opens the doors for them. And so as I think about de-escalating behaviors, what we found is normally in some of my other buildings and in our old building, when we had behaviors that were escalating, there was nowhere for people to go, and they would just walk up against a door that was closed. They wanted to go out through that door, but they couldn't. So here they can. This is a culture change for staff. Lots of healthcare professionals are very risk averse. And so having to learn that it's okay to let people come out and to walk outside and to access the community spaces. And then I think these are the real life pictures that you can see. So on the picture to the left, you can see our sacred space. And on the picture to the right, you can see our chapel. The other thing we also have is an outdoor kitchen, which now we're moving into the summer season is becoming very popular. And every household has an evening event outside once a week with the barbecue. So they come and actually cook using the barbecue, which has been super fun. The grocery store. The intention of the grocery store was, again, it's a place for people to visit. It's actually what I would say is the heart of our community area. It's where you'll find a lot of residents come and actually hang out and talk to people. They come here and get some of their treats, but also the staff come here with residents to collect produce that they would use in the household. So you can see on the left that there's some fruit and veg, and then there's some eggs and some bread, and some other things that they would come and collect. So not everything is delivered by the robots from the kitchen. People have to, with staff, the residents have to come and actually collect the produce that they're going to use. So if they want to make sandwiches at lunchtime, they have to come and collect the bread from our grocery store. The one thing we've learned from the grocery store is it's far too small. It could have been probably 10 times the size of the one we have. And that's similar to Dehugwe. They actually have a much bigger grocery store. And so in our new designs, we are making it a lot bigger. We've tried to be, I guess, inventive. And because we live in the West Coast and there's a lot of farmers markets, we do have most of the season, we have a lot of our produce outside that can be kept outside in some of these baskets that you see on the right-hand picture. And then the picture on the left is, as I say, this is a multi-service worker with one of our residents, and they've come to do the shopping for the day, collect things in their baskets, take back to the household. Home for Us model, I've been talking about it a little bit, but I'm going to just fly through some of these. I think I'll just go to this slide. So all the work that we've done here to change the culture and to develop this model is based on these 3 guiding principles. So the first one is emotional connections matter most. Second one being residents direct each moment of care. And then the third one is home is not a place, it's a feeling. And all the workflows that Mark mentioned, the job descriptions, and all the training that we've given our staff, these are embedded into everything we do. And even in the design of the building, as we were deciding on, what equipment we would have or what the rooms would look like, we would always go back to these 3 guiding principles to help us make a decision and keep us on track. Some of the goals for the home care, we've already talked about this, is really moving away from that task-based approach to care and making everything resident-centered and really around what the resident needs to have a day well lived. We look at trying to ensure that we're increasing freedom and choice and dignity for our residents. And so again, examples of things that we used to have in our old building, we used to have a bathing team. This would be, so it would be set at a certain time, certain schedule, and only certain staff could be part of the bathing team. And so it really didn't allow any choice by the resident. It wasn't very dignified. And so now in this new building, obviously people have the luxury of having their own ensuite, so they can just have a shower whenever they want. But if they do want a bath, it can be at any time of the day, and the staff work around that. Sorry, moved my mouse. Here we go. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of how we've worked this model. So when we look at emotional connections matter the most, when I think about some of the other homes that I work in, you often see residents spend a lot of time alone, maybe in their room, and they're trying to keep away from people, or they are actually with a lot of people, but there's no connection because they're all in one big room and you've got 50 people in a dining room and no one's really connected. And so what we've tried to make happen in these households is that we create this connection not only with residents to residents, but with staff to residents, but also the families. So giving them a choice around what the day looks like, around what the house looks like, and what activities are actually happening within the house and what activities are happening within our community area to try and create those connections. The other one, residents direct each moment. I mentioned this one about the bathing, but we have a lot of tasks and schedules that, people had to get up at a certain time. Breakfast is served between certain times, between 7:30 and 8:30. There was, you could only get food at those times. So what we want to do and what we're doing with this model is educating the staff and the residents and the families. The residents actually, even with dementia, can direct their own care. They can allow us to decide, or allow the residents to decide what they want their day to look like. And so this is not easy work because all of our staff are trained to work in routines. And I'm a nurse, and I remember, certain things had to be done by certain times in the day. And so this has been a big challenge for our staff, and one that they've taken on. And are we there yet? Not always, but we definitely are moving in the right direction. And the last one is around home is not a place, it's a feeling. And I talked a little bit about the kitchens looking like kitchens so people are grounded and know where they are. And I think the food service is the biggest part of our model, because when you think about people being part of a family or being part of a community. One of the things that you always think about is you break bread together and you do things around the kitchen table. And so that's one of the reasons that we've really focused on that big, large kitchen table that you saw. It enables residents to sit together and staff to sit with residents. It enables us to have more of that family style sort of food event or activity event around one big table, rather than people just being pocketed into smaller little areas. We talked about Dehugwe, and I'm not going to go into all of these, but we have worked with Dehugwe over the last 3 to 4 years, and we did look at all of their 7 pillars, and we've adapted each of these to help us with the work that we're doing. One of the things that I also wanted to talk about is really about the organization, and that really to us is about the job descriptions. And so we spent a lot of time working with our local unions to develop these job descriptions. It was not an easy task, but we've got there. And as I said, the development of that multi-service worker is sort of the first of its kind, really, in British Columbia. And as I say, it's proven to be very successful. I'm just going to whiz. I know we're running out of time, so I'm just going to whiz through these. Mark mentioned that we are evaluating this program with the University of British Columbia. We are, I guess, 3.5 years now into a 5-year project. So this entails that we have surveys with our residents every quarter. So every three months, we do these surveys around quality of life to give us an idea of how we're changing. And what we've done is we've compared it to the homes that we look after in Providence Healthcare as well. So we sort of have a test site, Comox, where we can be making all these improvements, and then we have these other sites where we're really not developing at the same speed to see if we're really making any differences. Some of the things that we have seen with our residents, I would say, is anecdotally we hear that residents are sleeping better because they get to go outside, they get to get fresh air. We are hearing that residents are eating more. We're thinking, are they hungry because they're outside and they're actually, doing more activity, or is it because the food is more homemade and more home cooked, and so they actually get to be at home and feel like they're at home? We are looking at the use of antipsychotics, and we're hoping to see a decrease in our antipsychotic use. We're also monitoring some, things like falls, and we do have people that fall, but what we're looking at really around is that managing risk, because people can fall, but what we don't want them to do is to hurt themselves. But we want people to have that freedom of movement and be able to move around and be able to feel like they have control over their life. I think to touch base, this is our operational framework, and again, it talks about the food experience, the hobbies and the interests. So the one position that I haven't talked about is our rec and leisure aide. So this is our old activity aide, and this is somebody who we have working in a neighborhood, so within 4 households, and they work with the staff and the residents to ensure that they're signed up for what we call the clubs. We don't have necessarily activities where everybody's expected to go to bingo. It's a club. If you want to sign up for the bingo club, you sign up, and you can do that through the rec and leisure aid. And so it takes away that feeling that everybody has to be involved in something, that you actually have choice of which club that you would like to be involved in. Just a little bit about the education and training. We developed 7 modules for our staff to take. And so 5 of them are online, and they vary from modules around communication, around how to deal with people with dementia, around how to deal with different ethical issues, around living at risk, and also around the language that we use. And so that education is still being refined. We had to do it very quickly, and so we're spending some time on refining it now, so we can actually spread this to the other sites that Providence Living and Providence Healthcare have. I've already done this one. think progress. I think I've already done most of this. Talked about our food waste. We actually feel that we've seen a 20% reduction. PRNs, we are hoping that we've seen a reduction. Initial reports are saying that we have. The other thing about staff injuries, we've seen a lot less staff injuries. Maybe we're thinking because of the robots, the tugs, the overhead lifts, and just the teamwork that people are involved in. And I think everything else we have talked about. I guess some of the things that we have had some challenges with, this MSW that I talked about, the multi-service worker, is cooking. Not everyone's level of cooking is the same. We all cook at home, but it's not always the same level. And so one thing we didn't really anticipate was the education that we would have to give MSWs around how to make sandwiches or how to prepare a salad or how to make some oatmeal in the morning. So there's one thing that we certainly learned from the beginning. The future. I'm going to hand it back to Mark quickly. Got a couple of slides.
Yeah, we're just about done here. One thing I don't think either of us mentioned is that this care home has been developed and delivered on the public dime. So this is not a private care home. I'm often asked that question. This is a publicly accessible and was built within publicly directed budgets. All of our staff are paid at the provincial rates. There's no exception to any of that. We did, however, get $5.4 million in donated money from the St. Paul's Foundation and the Conconi Family Foundation and the Comox Valley Hospital Foundation. So we were very grateful for that funds, and we are supporting some of the positions in the model with additional funds from our own sources, but primarily this is a publicly funded operation. So I don't think we need to talk too much. I've told you how many buildings we're going to be building. St. Vincent Heather is just about to start construction. This is what it will look like. It's going to be a 13-story tower, downtown Vancouver, version of what you've just seen. And what we've tried to do is take those village principles and build them into this tower. So this is 240 beds. Next one, Sharon. But in Prince George, we've got 13 acres. We're building 3 homes on 13 acres. This is the first one. So what we've been able to do here is to winterize, if you like, our Vancouver Island operation. So instead of having an outdoor garden, you can see on the ground floor, we've got lots of glass. We have a resident mall, which gives them access to the outdoors if the weather is appropriate. But for the most part, they can be in touch with nature from the inside. In Prince George, it starts snowing around the end of October, doesn't stop until the end of March. And I had no idea how little light they get. So we had to work very hard to try and position the building so they get lots of light. I think we got one picture of what we lost that one.
I don't have it, sorry.
Okay, fine. So I think we're done there, Bonnie.
No, that's wonderful, Mark and Sharon. So thank you. If you turn off your sharing, we can see you better. That would be great. And thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. And I've decided I'd like to move to Comox, BC, and I'd like to be in your home when I get to that point in life. And the thing that really struck me was the fried egg sandwich example you gave, because the very first thing I like in the morning is a cup of coffee. So I'm not sure how many homes would allow me to have that, but obviously yours would. So I was very much taken with your presentation. So thank you. There's a few questions come in, and one of them is related to that. Is there a wait list for your home, and how long would it be?
Sharon.
Yeah, so, well, there is a wait list, but it's not held by us. So in British Columbia, it's a it's a health authority wait list. And
Right.
so residents, families would apply through the local health authority, and they are assessed. And so it's assessed, and then it's means assessed for how much you would pay to be here as well. So depending on where you are in British Columbia, it will depend on how long you are waiting to get into long-term care. But I think the last I heard was about 18 months, but I think it's longer in other areas in British Columbia, but here it's around 18 months.
Okay, that's good. to know. And staff turnover, you mentioned the MSW workers. You have no trouble filling that position, but how is what are the positions, the rest of the positions that you hold within your households?
We have we have clinical representatives. So we have an RN who she works within the whole building, and then each household work as a duplex. And so there's an LPN, a licensed practical nurse, that works in between two duplexes, and then each household has a healthcare assistant, and then they have the multi-service worker as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And so our retention is actually quite low. I want to say it's just under 3% is our turnover. It's pretty low at the moment. It's about 2% our turnover. It's pretty low. We've just had some data from HR last month, but yeah, it is low. We're actually doing some focus groups here at the moment, and people feel very privileged to work here. And they think this is obviously a very, very beautiful place to work, and they're very excited to be able to be part of this model. It doesn't mean that everybody's happy. Obviously, there's still things that we're working on, but from those focus groups, what we've heard is people realize that it is a privilege to be able to work here in this new environment, doing something new, different, and innovative.
Right. So that's good. And one question that came through is, do you have a doctor on site?
Yeah, so the way it works here for us is that every resident has to have their own physician to be able to be admitted, and they're actually still connected to the physician in the community. So every physician we have about 30 physicians that come into the building connected to various residents. Sometimes some physician will have more than one resident that resides here, but sometimes it's just one. But yeah, so it's not someone that's permanently in the building. But we have contact with somebody. Yeah.
Okay. Your presentation covered off all the normal questions that we get in our webinars. Obviously, your way of doing the funding is something that's going to be of interest. And I realize you said, Mark, that this will be a whole new webinar on how to achieve a non-government entity. I mean, that would be most fascinating for us to understand how that works. And I realize we don't have time maybe, but is there a brief?
Yeah, I mean, essentially what we realized, the public entities in British Columbia are not allowed to hold debt. So therefore, capital funds have to come from government. And given the cost to build in British Columbia is for a long-term care bed ranges anything from, we're building in Prince George for 900,000 per bed. And the cost in Vancouver is around $1.8 million per bed. So that reduces the number of beds you can build. But in construction, time is money. So our value proposition is that as a non-government, non-profit, we can go to the bank, we can get a mortgage. And for instance, in Prince George, our 200-bed care home there, we signed a contract in December of 2023, and we started construction in March of 2025. So that's just over 13, 14 months plan. And the reason we were able to do that was because we didn't have to go through government financial procurement process. Very important. That can take a year and a half. We didn't have to redesign the whole building because we adapted our Comox building. We used the same architects and so on and so on. So the setup of that nonprofit entity took about 2 years because we had to do it. We had to get permission from government. There's a bunch of stuff to do to get that to actually happen, but well worth the effort, as you can see.
Absolutely.
We're now building where I worked in a health authority before this. The 3 projects that I was working on in 2019 are still not under construction. They are still in the planning phase from 2019. And we've built 1 home in that time here, and we've got 2 more in construction. So I think it speaks to the fact that the system is broken in terms of government procurement.
And as we, as CARP and their advocacy working group look at changing institutions to homes, we look at what's happening across the country, and there's not many dementia villages cropping up across Canada. And one wonders why not. One turns to the question of funding, and obviously government help and so on, and it's not there. Yeah.
I think obviously funding is always going to be an issue, but also that the healthcare sector is extremely institutionalized in how it sees long-term care, how it wants to so we want to design the building to be almost a hospital. That's very, very expensive and unnecessary.
Right.
So our building conforms to all those standards, but we've been able to do it. We fought many of those regulations. For instance, the health authority wanted a hand washing sink for every room. Unnecessary. We've got one for every 4 rooms. So and every resident room has a sink as well for the resident, but the staff are not allowed to use the same sink. These are regulations that are outdated. So
Right.
I think there are many, many reasons, but a lot of it is the institutional thinking of administration and the way in which they want buildings, and they allow I guess design by committee creates that old story that a horse designed by a committee is a camel.
Right.
That's the stuff that we've challenged in this process, and many of my team have come from health authority jobs because they're tired of that challenge. Sharon and I have 2 examples of that.
Right. I think it's marvelous what you've done, and we need to learn from you. And I'm really looking forward to hearing the results and outcomes of your research study. And I hope that you'll send them to us. And I want to thank you both, because the hour has come and I could talk to you for much longer. So thank you so much, Mark. And thank you so much, Sharon, for sharing your wonderful story with us. And we wish you well as you build more within the province. And we'll be watching to see how everything goes. So thank you so much for joining us. And I'll now turn it over to Bonnie.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. I get parting words. I want to echo Mark's thank you to Mark and Sharon for sharing their story. Just to highlight, there is several links in the chat, and tried to answer as many of the questions in the chat. We will be sharing the recording and the slides out at a later date. And on behalf of the Council on Aging and CARP Ottawa chapter, I thank everyone for coming today, and we will definitely continue to monitor and watch Providence grow their footprint in BC and hopefully transplant it to Ottawa and Ontario. So thank you very much for your contribution today. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.